Hello, everyone. How are you doing? I hope you are good. I hope you're having a great weekend so far. And I just realized I was so shocked when I saw it. I didn't even bring in the picture, but as I was about coming on, I was happened to go online and to check something, and then I just saw this very sad news that I don't know if maybe you guys have seen it before, and I hope I'm not dropping this on you. But very sad news of one of our TV, I don't know, everybody's seen Friends. I mean, I'm assuming one of the actors there who's very beloved, really, just passed away. And so I was just like completely taken by surprise. And obviously with anytime stuff like that, you don't expect stuff like that. And so Matthew Perry, who was played Chandler on Friends, passed away. And so it's just wow, it's very, very surprising and very, very, very sad to see. But yeah, it just, hug your loved ones, man. It's just, life is very fragile. So anyways, moving on. Welcome to Facts and Two Cents. I know there's a lot has been going on in the world. Very sad, very distressing news. So I hope that we're all taking care of our mental health and trying to get as much rest and just, taking a break from social media, whatever, and just making sure that we're okay as we, as we pray and we advocate for those who don't have a voice right now, especially sending out love and prayers to the people of Palestine who are just going through a whole lot right now. And really just, it's very, very sad what's going on there right now. But, yeah, so, but anyways, moving on to our, what I came on here to say, moving on. One of the things that has been amazing the last few days has been Byline Times. I mean, they are rocking. They have just rocked the British world when it comes to reporting and broadcasting. And they just dropped their first newspaper, print newspaper, and UK is there, very excited about it. It's been trending for a couple of days, and so they are doing great. It is I mean, people are so excited to finally get factual information that they are just eating it up and very excited to get facts and not their lies, misinformation, all that stuff, especially from the tabloid press that's been fed to the or really force-fed to the British public for so long. So they're really excited about that, and it's doing great. And so obviously their first issue is with this incredible story backing up pretty much everything Harry and Meghan said about what happened and when they left the Royal Institution. And one of the things that is, about this paper, as we know, that they have been really reporting out on Dan Wootton and his drama and mess that has been, and the stuff that he's been doing. And so he is now suspended, I think, partly because of those articles that are really just exposing him for all the things that he is. And so they have now moved away from Martin Branning, so to speak, and then, now have moved into his relationship and his connection to the royal family and the split that has happened between Harry and Meghan and the Royal Institution. And so this whole there's a whole paper of different articles, but this is the feature article and front page. And so the whole front page is about Dan Wootton, and it's about, as it says, the truth about Megxit. Even though it's a really derogatory word, but they're quote unquote Megxit because that's what Dan Wootton termed it when he was writing his stories about them leaving. And so Byline Times, that's what they chose to do. It's like, the Dan Wootton, the truth about Megxit. And then at the bottom it says how Murdoch and the monarchy's toxic relationship splits the royal family. So the theme, or the grand theme of the whole story, is about how Dan Wootton affected the split of he's part of the reason why there is a split, and how Murdoch, who is working for the Sun at the time, how Murdoch and their toxic relationship with the royal family is the reason for the split between Meghan and Harry and the royal institution. And if you got like like me, if you have the online version, there's even more. There's even like more to it, what they put in there than it is on print. It's like the truth about Megxit, how Dan Wootton and a cash for leak scandal split the royal family. So it's very specific that the article, the crux of the article, what it's about, all of it is based on Dan Wootton and the cash for leak scandal that split the royal family. And it even goes on to say a Scotland Yard probe journalist Dan Wootton over allegations of blackmail and serial sexual catfishing. After a 3-year special investigation by Byline Times, this newspaper can now reveal how his payment to the partner of a top royal aide forced the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to run from the UK, sending shockwaves through the monarchy. And this story obviously is by Dan Evans and Tom Latcham. And so this is all, the whole crux, the whole story, all of that is about Dan Wootton and what he did and how badly it affected the royal family. So with all of this information, with all of the whole front page, that's what's blasting on the front pages of the outlet. I mean, again, if you have the online version, you have even more. It's all about Dan Wootton and how it affects, how what he did affected the royal family and what he was a part of, how it affected the royal family. So one would assume if you're going to be reporting out on this story, this is what you'd be talking about. I mean, yes, there are other things in the story, but the whole of it is based on Dan Wootton and how leaks to Dan Wootton divided the royal family. So then it begs the question, if you're going to report about it, as ITV did, is the only news outlet, the only broadcast news outlet that reported on the story, you would think that would be part of it, Dan Wootton. And if you think that, you would be wrong. You would be completely wrong. Because ITV did it's like 5-7 minute segment on this article. And not one word was mentioned about Dan Wootton. Not one. Nowhere. Zilch. It's like Dan Wootton did not exist in this article at all, in any sense of the word. It's like they've never even heard the name. And you're like, but the whole article is like, it's about what Dan Wootton did and the leaks to him and what the whole article. How did you miss Dan Wootton? How did you miss that part of, and when that is the front page, that's the first thing you see. That is the first thing you see. I mean, there's a picture of Dan Wootton in the middle, like you see. It's like he's literally in the middle there between William and Kate and Harry and Meghan. He's right there in the middle. How do you miss Dan Wootton? But sure enough, Tom Bradby and his team of bungling, I don't know what they are, but they're definitely not journalists, completely ignore Dan Wootton's presence in this. I mean, completely. It's like it didn't even matter. It didn't even, Dan Wootton's nowhere there at all. And so you'd wonder, like, how do you do that? And why would you do that? And then you get to this. And then when you read this, you realize, okay, now I get how Dan Wootton could somehow have been eliminated from this whole narrative, and why it would have been eliminated from this whole narrative. And so a little bit of reading from the article. Despite not holding a formal remit from the Sun to cover royal matters, Wootton, who was the newspaper's executive editor for show business and television coverage until he departed in 2021 to become the star presenter for GB News, started taking an interest in royal stories in 2018. And on 13th of March 2019, Wootton published an article in The Sun about an alleged falling out between William and Kate and the Marquis and Marchioness of Cholmondeley, David Ruxbridge and Rose Hansbury, who the paper dubbed Kate's rural rival. But for reasons that's not clear, the article was subsequently removed from the Sun's website, but remained widely reported elsewhere. A former friend of Wootton told Byline Times that the journalist's allegiance appeared to quickly shift from one prince to another. And this is what the Sun said about Dan and Prince William. Dan hated Prince William until around May 2019, he said. Behind closed doors, he didn't have a good word for him. He was always talking about his attitude. But Dan never criticized Harry, really. He never seemed to have much interest at all. Then suddenly, in the summer of 2019, he switched. Basically, he was hating on Harry and Meghan. He had previously been obsessed with Prince William, and then he just switched to the Sussexes. And you're like, well, what happened? What happened? In March, you're writing about William's alleged affair and hinting about William's alleged affair with Rose Hansbury. And then all this time you're hating William, completely hate him, can't stand him. And all of a sudden, for no reason, it's like clockwork. You just switched to all of a sudden. And if you go back to his articles, and even through when he worked for the Daily Mail or the Mail Online, he would write all of these like, I want to be your best friend articles about, it was embarrassing, some of the articles that he wrote. The most groveling, just, and I should have brought in some of those titles about Prince William. And all of a sudden, he is Prince William's best friend, his biggest supporter, his biggest cheerleader. This man who you hated, could not stand. All of a sudden, in like blink of an eye, you switched, and the person you weren't even interested in, you weren't talking about Harry at all. The person you weren't interested, all of a sudden, you started hating them. For no reason, you hated them and started groveling up to Prince William. And so what happened? This happened. And we talked about this before in a previous episode. Because all of a sudden there started being leaks to Dan Wootton. And all of a sudden this showbiz editor, the showbiz guy, as Harry called him, how did the showbiz guy get, his hands on my personal letter to my father saying that I'm leaving, that we're going to be spending time in Canada and splitting our time between Canada and the UK, and that we want to give up our titles? What? How did that private information get into Dan Wootton's hand? And there are all these leaks about Meghan, about her nannies, and all of these things. How is all of this stuff getting into Dan Wootton's hands? And then, of course, somebody at Dan Wootton's office blew the whistle, and police got involved. It got to Harry and Meghan's hand, and letter before action start, they're like, okay, we're taking legal action. And from those information came, from the leaked information came that the person that's been doing it's Christian Jones, publicity guy for, Prince William. Oh, he was also helping out the Sussexes as well at the time. and that his boyfriend, Callum Stevens, was the one allegedly leaking information to Dan Wootton for money. Got paid £4,000 for that information. And that was on the leaked information that the whistleblower basically told a reporter, who passed it on to the police, who passed it on to Harry's team. One of the things that happened is, with all of this stuff, they had to question Christian Jones. The police couldn't do it because the whistleblower refused to reveal themselves. And then it was left to the palace to, do an investigation. So, of course, Christian Jones had been questioned by his bosses. He said that, yes, he had known Dan for a while, but that he did not know him very well, and that Prince William's courtiers, who had appointed him, didn't have a problem with it. Christian told them that his partner had indeed been paid the sum that at the time stated, and the sum at the time stated in the whistleblower's emails, and for the amount described, but the money related to stories about clients his partner represented in their work as a publicist, and nothing to do with Prince Harry and Meghan. One of the partner's clients supposedly has a name that's as the Duchess of Sussex. There was the suggestion that, that was the reason for some of the money paid, and that the timing was just, a fluke. On that basis, Christian faced no further action. He retained confidence of Kensington Palace, and later on had a couple of big promotions. You go, Christian. Why would ITV leave all this information out? Why would ITV do a whole report and leave this stuff out? Why would he, leave this crux of this? I mean, they sort of skimmed over Christian Jones. He was accused of leaking. He said he didn't, and then the palace told Harry to take his name off of the letter before action, and Harry didn't, and therefore Prince Charles at the time took his money away for security. But what it didn't cover was the Dan Wootton Prince William connection. How did we get from Dan Wootton hating Prince William and then all of a sudden switching and hating Prince Harry and Meghan? And we all know why that is. There's an exchange happened. It's what the palace always does. It's the exchange. Dan Wootton is writing about something Prince William doesn't want anybody to know. The press has basically been gagged from talking about this. The British press, when this comes up, the mute buttons, the mute buttons comes on like, they've been gagged. Can't say anything about it, right? They don't want people to know. They don't want to have to, if they bring up Dan Wootton, they're going to have to explain this. They're going to have to explain this part in the article where it talks about how Dan Wootton switched, like right away, switched from, writing this article, the Sun takes it off the website, and all of a sudden, Dan Wootton goes from hating Prince William to loving Prince William and hating Harry and Meghan. They'd have to explain all that, and they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. And it's very interesting because the person that is accused of doing it, Christian Jones, all Christian Jones had to say, no, it wasn't me, I know Dan, I know him for professionally, but we're not, as he said it in red here, he strongly denied that either he or his partner were close friends with Dan Wootton, the journalist. We're not friends, so of course we wouldn't leak. It's somebody that has the name Meghan, just like Meghan, the Duchess. It's not that Meghan, it's a different Meghan. Don't you see? And all Christian had to do was say, no, I'm sorry, to his co-worker who was the one doing the investigation. And what did they do? They took Christian at his word. It says at the bottom, on that basis, Christian faced no further action. Not only that, he retained the confidence of Kensington Palace, and later on had a couple of big promotions. What are the odds of Dan Wootton completely switching from hating Prince William to loving Prince William and hating Prince Harry, who he didn't care to talk about before? And as a matter of fact, we've seen emails of him just loving up on Harry, really drooling over Harry. And all of a sudden overnight, he goes to hating Harry and getting all of these juicy stories about Harry and only praise for William. groveling. I mean, goodness, you're about ready to see him just fall on his face and lick William's boots all of a sudden. And on the flip side, have all of these hateful articles against the Sussexes, calling them all kinds of nasty names in the book. And when William's assistant was accused of it, all he had to say was, no, I don't know Dan. I don't know him at all. We didn't do it. And it's like, oh, okay, we believe you, Christian. Here are a couple of promotions. That's all that needed to happen. ITV would have had to explain all of this. And they didn't want to. They didn't want you to know that, yeah, there is, yeah. They didn't want to have to explain about why Dan Wootton, why the Sun took that article down. They didn't want to explain any of those stuff. They didn't want you knowing that. They're counting on people not reading the article, so they don't know that that's in there, And of course, we know with Christian Jones that he lied about his relationship with Dan Wootton, because there are pictures of Christian and Dan at Dan's very private birthday party with 20 of his besties. And so we know he lied about it, but did the Kensington Palace really investigate? I mean, if Christian Jones and his boyfriend leaked this information to that, of course they didn't. Why? Because this was Kensington Palace doing this. All Christian had to do was say, oh, no. And it's like, okay, we believe you. They're not investigating, really. Harry said in his book, when they met for the Sandringham Summit, that he had this conversation with William about this aide that was leaking information. He's found out, he knew it was very credible because he got it from reporters, and he got it from the police and legal team. They all were part of this case. So Harry had good, solid evidence that this was happening. So William knew this was happening. And Harry told him about it. William's like, yeah, I suspected, but never did anything about it. And why exactly did William not do anything about it? Why? Because I think we all know this came from them. I think we all know the exchange. Let's exchange the William and Rose Hansbury story, and let's just give you Sussexes. Let's feed, as Meghan said, let's feed you Sussex stories so you can destroy them and love up on William. And it's like in real time, we saw ITV just played right back into that. Instead of doing, it's amazing. You're reading an article by a news outlet that report without fear or favor, but they gave right into the fear of not exposing this part, of completely deleting Dan Wootton from this story, completely not even mentioned. If you didn't read the article and if you knew nothing about it, you would never know Dan Wootton was in this article from the way how they reported it. You'd never know. Because if they brought in Dan Wootton, then they'd have to bring up Prince William and the relationship with Prince William. They'd have to bring up Prince William's relationship with Christian Jones. They'd have to bring up the fact that Christian Jones lied about the nature of his relation, the depth of his relationship with Dan Wootton. And they don't want you to know that. They don't want people to know that. They don't want people to know that there's a possibility that William is the one that set up his PR person who is friends with Dan Wootton, as Christian Jones says. When he was hired, they had no problems with his relationship with Dan Wootton. They had no problems with that. His courtiers had no problems with it. So then William would have known that. And so they traded that story. So if you bring up Dan Wootton, you'd have to bring up Prince William. Then you'd have to bring up his relationship with Christian Jones. And then you'd have to bring up Christian Jones's relationship to Dan Wootton. And then you'll see the circle. And there is no way you can read this story and not know that they traded William's story. They traded William's, alleged relationship, alleged cheating relationship with Rose Hansbury. They traded that for lies and gossip and all of that stuff that Dan Wootton would twist all much way to make it a negative story against the Sussexes. There's no way you would, you wouldn't know that. And so instead of bringing all that up, they completely deleted Dan Wootton from the story. Unbelievable. And again, they are reading a newspaper that report without fear or favor. And yet, what did they do? The exact opposite of that. The exact opposite of that. Protecting William at any cost. Unbelievable. Anyway, that's it. That's, again, that's the way of the British press. That is the way they will spin things. They would twist it all kinds of ways so you don't know the full truth of what is happening. So I am really happy that Byline Times is here, and they are, again, reporting without fear or favor. That means whatever the truth is, they're going to just talk about it. They are not indebted to anybody. They don't owe anybody anything. They are not funded by oligarchs. They're not funded by billionaires and millionaires and, advertising people. They're just simply funded by people. And so they are free to say whatever they want to say, and nobody has challenged them. So anyways, I am grateful to see people just speaking the truth. And so, yeah. Anyways, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Check out the other episodes where I talk about a little bit more about what ITV has done and not done. Thank you to our awesome moderators, Lydia, Trish, Nelly, Karen M, Cookies and Cream, and Black Queen. Thank you so much. This most likely will not have a chat, and I'll just drop a video. But thank you guys anyway for when we do. Thank you so much to our awesome 2 Cents crew who support the channel on a monthly basis, and to our wonderful Gold Star supporters who support in the chat. That is amazing. Thank you all so much. I love you all. Have a fantastic time and a fantastic day, and I will chat with you later. Bye.